Right. We should be good to go. Okay. Let's just make sure. Turn all the volume down on here so that I can quickly sneak onto TikTok on my alternative account and see how we're doing. Hello, everyone. How is everyone this evening? Today, obviously, we're looking at, was the Middle Ages invented? Obviously, we know the answer to this, but as you can see, as we move over to this screen, the fun has truly begun. Yeah, this is where the fun begins, as Anakin would say. Hang on, I'm just going to try and get my phone charger so I can actually keep the phone going, so I can look at the TikTok chat at the same time as I can look at the regular chat. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live stream. Today we are obviously taking a look at, is the phantom time hypothesis real, and does it have any validity? Yeah, obviously I found this video is really good because it's got an AI voiceover, and I did think about just doing like the kings and generals. I did think about just doing like the kings and generals video where they actively debunk it, but then I fought against that one. So yeah, right, okay, let's just get straight into it this time. I think we know. Ooh, is that loud? We might have to
what if
pull down the audio there.
History never actually happened?
Okay, right. That's loud. Let's cut that for a second. There we go. Let's cut that back.
What if our records, our books,
still aggressively loud? There we go. Is that better? Let me know, guys. And as we go, obviously put the questions in the chat.
Had never even existed, and instead were fictional constructs of later.
The idea of Charlemagne not existing is hilarious.
These are the claims put forward in our theory today.
Oh, okay.
Phantom time hypothesis. Step into the world of historical enigmas and prepare to have your perception of time turned upside down as we explore the phantom time.
Okay. I'm looking forward to this one.
Suggests that a significant chunk of history.
As this gets worse and this will get more and more unhinged, I just want everyone to remember that they asked me to do this. This was voted for on YouTube. This was the highest selected poll. This was what everyone wanted me to go and watch. Oh, dearie me. This is the fun times. Right.
Specifically the years AD 614 to AD 911, never actually happened and were fabricated or distorted by powerful forces of the time. The phantom time hypothesis was first proposed by German historian and author Heribert Illig in the 19th.
I am not ready, Emeridan. I am not ready for this. Also, if you're on TikTok, make sure you like the live and share it. It pushes it out and helps greatly in the algorithm, especially if it gets lots of likes. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you like, again, same thing, and share it if you can. Though sharing isn't as important on YouTube, the likes certainly are. But yeah, so this guy, Herbert Illig, I've had a preliminary read up on the phantom time hypothesis. This guy, basically, we'll get into it because there's a lot of stuff to talk about against this hypothesis.
Including the existence of famous figures like Charlemagne.
Okay, we're not even in it. We're not even in there yet.
The Holy Roman Emperor.
We're not even. I'm sorry. Charlemagne didn't exist. Do you know what evidence we can put forward for the existence of Charlemagne? The genetic evidence from Sir Christopher Lee, the greatest actor of all time. For Sir Christopher Lee to exist, Charlemagne had to exist because Sir Christopher Lee was a direct descendant from Charlemagne. Oh, this is going to be a fun one.
These entities wanted to legitimize their power by extending their reigns back to a more significant historical era.
Right, what?
So, how did they manage to pull off such an audacious deception? Illig suggested that the missing years were inserted into the calendar by adjusting the dating system, fabricating documents, and even altering archaeological evidence.
Okay, so they were getting ready for the archaeologists of current day. They were that prepared that they knew the archaeologists now would be like, oh, there's sank going on here. To respond to Meridan, I do like conspiracy theories, but I just like them to make a lick of sense. I quite like my alien conspiracy theories. The government being, intertwined with aliens. Just because I say I don't like alien conspiracy theories doesn't mean that you can make me watch ancient aliens in the future. We don't want that. Over on YouTube, we've got Smoke Big Fairy Tales. How are you doing, Trip? Are we supposed to be able to hear the video you're watching? Have I got that muted?
Essentially, he proposed that the period between AD 6...
Is it audible now? It might be because I had it paused. It's probably because I had it paused. Miley Cyrus is a reptilian. See, that's a more fun. Yeah, TikTok side does definitely hear it. Let me know YouTube side if the audio is coming through. But that's a more sensible conspiracy theory than Charlemagne didn't exist. And also, aside from falsifying archaeological evidence, right? My next issue that we have here, okay, my next issue that I've just come across is, you can falsify all the documents you want in Europe. You're claiming that Pope Sylvester II, Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, and the Eastern Roman Emperor Constantine the seventh, sorry, they all got together and they told YouTube. They told YouTube. They told all of the Europeans. Okay, this is the date now. So what about the African nations that had calendars going on and their own archaeological evidence, and also the Chinese nations, the various also the various Asian nations overall, like Korea and Japan. Like, there's a lot of issues there.
14 and 911 was a time of historical manipulation, a phantom time. How would it be possible to fake such a massive chunk of history? Illig's hypothesis is supported by several arguments.
Okay. Go on then.
One of the main pieces of evidence cited is the scarcity of archaeological findings from the alleged phantom time period. Illig claimed that there was a lack of physical artifacts from this time, suggesting that something was amiss. Another compelling argument put forward by Illig involves the discrepancies in historical records, especially those related to the calendar system.
Okay.
He pointed out inconsistencies in the dating methods used during that period, including
Right. We have the Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar directly competing for each other during this time period. The Gregorian calendar may have come a bit later. When was Gregorian calendar sorted? I've also got, you're going to see some other tabs, because I do have other videos that I'm going to recommend you watch after this that actually provide good. When was the Gregorian calendar introduced? 1582. Okay, that defeats that argument. Actually, no, that helps greater, because the Julian calendar was wildly inaccurate. That's why we brought in the Gregorian calendar, and it's why the common give us out. I think it was like 18 or 16 days back that people protested over. Oh, the good old days when we protested over calendar. Actually, no, we still protest over calendars. It's just when Twitter conservatives get mad at absolutely nothing. Thank you for sharing the live, guys, on our boy YouTube. It gives me a little notice to say, that I've been shared. Thank you, guys. Right. Oh.
These irregularities indicate a deliberate manipulation of time.
But no.
Time hypothesis, Illig referenced a few key historical events that allegedly
over on YouTube, we've got Joshua Cadwell saying, so history, Jeffrey Epstein. I was not on the island. The moustache may say otherwise. Stanley DeVito said that 95% of what went over there was perfectly fine. It was the other 5% that sullied the whole operation. Dylan says history is a non. I'm assuming you tried to say nonce in the YouTube censor got rid of it. I sound like an English teacher. I do in these lives. Tell you what, next week, I can see Trip is it? Hang on, let me. Well, I don't know what's going on with YouTube. TikTok is saying that it's audible when I play it. Hang on.
During this phantom period.
Right.
A notable example is the famous Battle of Hastings in 1066. According to Illig.
Hang on. I don't know why it's not working over on YouTube. There's a serious delay. Okay, so it's coming through on when I play it on my phone. So I don't know what's going on there, and I don't know how to fix it your end because the
Was actually a staged event.
yeah, Stream Elements is saying it's giving the audio to YouTube and TikTok, and when I play the live stream on my phone, it's coming. The audio is coming through for the video. I think it's probably because I keep pausing it. Yeah, hang on, I had more stuff in the TikTok chat. Charlemagne did exist. Yeah, I think Trip, it might be your end. Hello Lily, hello. But just quickly while Trip is in the chat, I wasn't going to announce this until later, but next week, me and Trip, or Trip and I, will be embarking on a new Daddy's Chats. May come back at some point, but me and Trip and I will be starting a new show where we find obscure and random bits of history that are just kind of weird. We're starting off with sea maidens. We're looking in times when people wanted to shag manatees and the sirens and all that stuff, like just the entire phenomenon and how we think it got into the psyche. And that is just to give you an idea of how unhinged it's going to be. And also, Trip has just launched his 10th book in the Smoke Pit Fairy Tale series, which I do highly recommend you check out. Charlemagne did exist, but he shouldn't have. That's very true. I I get a lot of hate because I really don't like him. He's credited a lot with spreading Christianity, but he's one of those rulers that didn't like. He kind of he took the I should spread Christianity part of his faith very well. He just didn't understand that you're not meant to do it by the sword. He's also notable for burning Saxons alive in their homes and their places of worship. So, yeah, a bit of a prick. Yeah, Charlemagne, I don't like Charlemagne. I like the fact that Sir Christopher Lee came out of his lineage, but I don't like him. Random question: what is my favourite tank? The Challenger 2 battle tank. I've had it since I had been obsessed with it since I was a child. I'm not really like a tank person. I kind of like my cavalry units and stuff like that. I'm not really a modern warfare type of guy. I RPGs I like sword fighting. But yeah, Challenger 2 battle tank. Yeah, right. Okay, let's listen to more of this Unhinged.
Figures like William the Conqueror were invented to give it credibility. But wouldn't people in the Middle Ages notice this supposed...
Could you talk about when the Aztecs used chocolate as money? We can certainly put that on the list of things. I have a couple things I want to talk about. Have you heard about Robert Kett's rebellion, Norwich Tudor history? I have not, but that will be going into my notes to look into. I genuinely see a lot of people give me info and they're like, you haven't done it. It's because it takes a lot of time to research this stuff, and currently I don't have as much time as I did over the last year. But I do put it into notes. So it's the Robert Kett rebellion. I do love a good rebellion. Not to get too much into my politics. I do love a good rebellion. My favourite, I think, has got to be the Peasants' Rebellion of Tyler Watt, for obvious reasons. OMG, that's my profile picture. Hang on, your profile picture is too small on my PC. Can I see it on? Oh, it is! It is! That is brilliant. I love it, Lily. That's brilliant. Brilliant. Took Norwich Castle, absolutely amazing. I can hear it. Yeah, I might be in my end. The US government's trying to stop you from learning about the phantom time hypothesis, which we're not even 3 minutes in, and I've already ranted about this for how long have I been streaming? We'll get they'll get the TikToks that's normally more accurate, because for some reason Stream Elements counts me streaming the second I connect it to YouTube. Don't ask why. It's been about a quarter of an hour, and we haven't even. This is going to be a long one. I'm not even drinking for this one, because I have to watch my drink, because the doctor says that my liver is not coping well with it. So we're not even drinking for this one. It's going to be a fun one. My favourite is Star Wars. Yes, it's such a shame that Disney never made those sequels. The only good Disney Star Wars is Rogue One and the 2 seasons of Mandalorian, and I stand by that. And yes, I've seen most of it. I saw everything up to Boba Fett, and then I couldn't stomach it anymore. Can you talk about when you had to? Yeah, I already got that. Yes. Weird fact: North Korea held its own WWE talk wrestling show. Josh, can you send me these over on the Count's Discord so I can actually remember them, and I'll talk to Trip about having, because I know Trip's got a few ideas for what he wants to talk about in the upcoming shows, but obviously I'm not going to say no to topics. So send me them over on Discord, and I'll take a look at them. Right.
Historical manipulation. Well, Illig proposed that the general population was either ignorant of the conspiracy or actively involved in maintaining the deception.
So poor people. Wait. So his answer to what was the entire population, not ignoring the fact that, again, Asia, Africa, they were connected at this point. Egypt, very prominently, right? Was still, I think at this point would have still been part of the Eastern Roman Empire. I think so. I'm not 100% sure on that. Borders changed too much for my liking. So his argument is that poor people are dumb, or they were in. The entire population of Europe was in on the conspiracy. This is going to be a long stream.
Were complicit in upholding the fabricated history, suppressing any dissenting voices. So,
yeah, obviously that would make sense. The historians would have to be on it.
That Illig claims prove his phantom time hypothesis to be true. Missing historical.
I'm gonna turn it up a bit. It might be a bit loud on my end.
That there is a lack of archaeological
See if the audio is better now.
Documentation for significant events, such as
Is the audio too loud or too quiet? Let me know.
That are said to have occurred within the phantom.
Yes, the collab is going to be live between me and Trip. Purely because me and Trip bounce off of each other the best. So it's like, we get on well, and we have very niche interests in history, and I quite like the idea of being able to explore that with someone who is going to enjoy exploring them. I.e., why we're starting off the series talking about different varieties of fish women that men have wanted to shag throughout the ages. Is it still too quiet?
Time period.
I might have to turn it back up.
The absence of substantial evidence raises doubts about the authenticity of these events. One example Illig mentions.
See, TikTok's saying it's too loud.
And physical traces of the Battle of Fontenoy, a
The
major conflict that took place
the
in
YouTube saying it's too
841
quiet.
According to Illig,
Cheers, Josh.
scarcity of evidence suggests that the battle may not have occurred, or that its
Oh no! Right.
is inaccurate.
I used to get really mad at this, and this used to infuriate me because I would say, "Oh, we don't know where this battle took place." And I was having a discussion with Dennis Fang, and Dennis Fang is very much an evidence guy. Me and him have had some very heated debates because we disagree on a lot. Like off screen, I would love to get him back on, but because he's in Australia, it's hard to actually organise anything. With battles, you very rarely find evidence of them unless you know exactly where you are and you know where to look. Because battlefields get looted, the armor is less. It's normally just taken and melted down because it's not a video game. You can't just if you're playing Skyrim and you steal an iron cuirass off of a bandit woman and then you try and put it on, it's probably not going to fit you. If a woman could probably put on a man's armor because of the way they were shaped. But the way armor is shaped in fantasy settings is slightly different. But you get my drift. So armor would tend to be melted down because it was very expensive to get it changed and reshaped because metal's not exactly, it's not exactly tailoring. I might have to. I can't bring up the audio any louder because it will blow out TikTok. But yeah. We're forgetting those incredibly sexy harpies of Greece. We can take a look at the harpies. I'm not see if you've watched any of the shows me and Trip have done in the past, we are very lucid in what we do, which means there will be tangents. So if you come into those lives, either on YouTube or on TikTok, you're gonna see some unhinged discussions. Different mythological beings that we would sleep with. That'll probably be a recurring theme. Ruben on TikTok says, with such historical military interest, have you? How come you never considered a career in the military? I did when I was younger. I wanted ever so slightly to be a sniper, and then I was told I couldn't, and then I was told I could. Yeah, it's a long and convoluted story. I did for a while. Maybe I'll tell it one day if I do a drinking stream. over on YouTube. Some people are saying it's audible and some people are saying it's too quiet. I have no idea how to fix this. This is going to be something I have to look into.
Missing artifacts.
I've turned it up as much as I can without
that there is a dearth of artifacts and materials
making TikTok streaming platform cry. It's because I'm dual streaming, that's probably the issue.
He argues that the scarcity of such artifacts indicates a deliberate manipulation of the historical record.
I've covered why this is wrong, literally already in the live. We're gonna ignore it.
During the Phantom time period. Illig questions why there are relatively few coins discovered from this era compared to surrounding periods, implying that this lack of numismatic evidence raises doubts about the existence of the Phantom time. Illig suggests...
Right. So by that logic, the Celts didn't exist before the Romans turned up. Because there's tribes, there's northern, what would become England, northern Celtic tribes from England, who we only know about from a couple phrases in Greek documents or Roman documents, and we haven't found their coins, and that's normally how we map the territories of let me boost the audio. Wait, Luton, is the audio? I've boosted the audio on
that ruling
YouTube.
powers
Is that
may
better?
have reused designs and architectural motifs to maintain continuity and deceive future generations.
There we go. Right, anyways, back to my rock.
Archaeological...
Right. Shut up with your lack of archaeological evidence. This is Graham Hancock all over again. Why don't... all these people go into a meeting and they're like, how can we... Terms of service, Ryan, you can't say those words. Oh, you know it's bad when you actually have to catch yourself. This is why me doing my yeah, hang on, I'm gonna turn down the video again. I think I fixed YouTube. I've boosted the audio on YouTube, which should fix it now. Yeah, I've boosted. What I've done, Mr. Luton, is I've boosted the audio on YouTube and I've decreased it on TikTok. Because dual streaming is never easy, but it's the only way that you can get your account out there now, and all of the gurus say you have to do it, and I'm not dual streaming to Twitch because I'm not supporting pornography. Where was I? Anyways, ranting. Yeah, no. The lack of archaeological evidence, that means basically I have to pretend that all of the Celts in the north didn't exist because there's multiple Celtic tribes. So the way we figure out where Celts, their territory extended to, is we look at where the coins were. We look at how far the coins went out and we can build a rough idea of how far their kingdom spread at any given time. And obviously because different kings minted different coins, you could see how far that specific king roughly had their territory. It's not an exact science, but it's the best we've got without having a TARDIS. But there are Celts that we have mentioned by word of mouth from other Celts, and then the Greeks and the Romans have written them down. So, by that logic, because they only exist to, as far as we know, on paper and maybe in one or two lines, that means you have to discount their existence entirely. I'm really getting... I'm getting angry. The last one, I think that the alcohol helped because I was laughing. And I debated having another drink with this one. But I was like, I need to get back on my drinking. I don't know if I told you, but Pepsi was the 6th largest nation in 1986. I have heard this one. It's not quite as exciting as some people make out, though, when you dive into it. Because it was more or less by accident. And that might be a short, because I want to do some shorts on TikTok and stuff. Could be lab. Club could be interesting. I don't think I've seen that done before. Yes. Too much of fish women. Modern why can't I talk today? It's the pure rage. Modern military history is often overrated, despite it being one of my favourites. World War One military history is really big. It sounds like every guy hits 25 and picks one of 4. World War One military history is probably really good. It's not something I know in depth, but it is. I dive into that quite thoroughly when I get a chance. What is most versatile fighting force in history? The Mongols. 100% cavalry is cavalry. I'm a big cavalry guy. If you know me well enough, I listen to the Winged Hussars by Sabaton regularly. They're my favourite military unit of all time, and like that's including modern stuff. The Winged Hussars are, one of the best and most versatile fighting forces. They had pistols, they used spears, they used lances, They used swords, and the fact is, when you rode towards them, their wings would whistle. The most famed charge of winged hussars, there was 3,000 winged hussars leading a 20,000 strong cavalry charge, the largest cavalry charge in history, against 80,000 Turks, and they won. And then obviously the rest of the forces came in. It was one of the few times Europe came together to kick out the Turks. It was the second siege of Vienna. It's one of my favourite historical events because obviously the Ottomans got their asses handed to them. Originally considered being a tanker, but I'm going into the fire service instead after college. The fire service is a very noble cause. I salute you, Lily, and yeah, very noble cause. Tankies are way cooler. Do you mean tanks or tankies as in the extreme communists? I can't hear you over the video, but I think I've sorted that issue. What alcohol are you drinking now? I'm not drinking anything tonight. I might have a can of Monster later, because an energy drink is so much better. The Ottomans, I'm not even going to finish that, Meridan. That's how you get blocked. That's how you get blocked. The pro-Napoleon or pro-Ottoman propaganda is not accepted in either of my chats. Not gonna lie, I've been researching the Korean War. I hate it that I like the little heart button that you get on YouTube now. It's very nice, but it blocks the comments when I'm trying to read them. I've been researching the Korean War of late, and it's quite interesting. The Korean War is a very interesting one because it's known very much as the Forgotten War. And we are 26 minutes into the live stream, and we're only 4 minutes into this proxy video. Right, okay, let's.
Evidence. One of the arguments put forth by Heribert Illig in support of the phantom time hypothesis revolves around the perceived lack of archaeological evidence from the phantom time period. Illig argues that the scarcity of material remains and historical artifacts discovered from this era is disproportionately low when compared to other historical periods. He suggests that this dearth of evidence is a consequence of the fabricated nature of the phantom time. Illig claims that if the phantom time period were genuine and had witnessed significant historical events, cultural developments, and architectural endeavors, one would expect a more abundant archaeological record. He argues that the relatively few discoveries attributed to the phantom time period, in contrast to surrounding eras, indicate a deliberate suppression or manipulation of archaeological evidence. According to Illig, the lack of archaeological findings is particularly pronounced when it comes to significant structures, urban settlements, and cultural artifacts. He questions why there are relatively fewer remnants of large-scale construction projects or thriving cities that should have existed during the phantom time period. Illig suggests that the absence of such evidence is a result of deliberate efforts to limit or control the archaeological record in order to
Oh! I don't know how to respond to that. I don't know how to respond to that. So it went from lack of archaeological evidence to lack of buildings. So they weren't building enough for him. Because he's not saying there's no buildings, because he knows for a fact that we have buildings from that. The issue is, we have buildings that we've carbon dated. Which means they were built then. He's also forgetting a very big piece of medieval warfare was sieges, so we knocked stuff down. And also, people have this image that every settlement in medieval Europe and around the world was massive forts and walled cities. Real life wasn't Game of Thrones. Most settlements were tiny villages with some wooden palisades as fortifications. That was majority of people weren't living in massive castles, or if they were living in walled cities, which already were built and were being built upon. It's why York has the most Roman ghost sightings in Europe, to my knowledge, apart from it outside of Italy. Like, we still have there's still Roman roads today that we just paved over, because a lot of history is humans building over what the people who came before them built. Okay, sorry. I'm getting very agitated by this. I've done a bit of research into the Korean War, but I mostly just researched World War II and Vietnam. Fair enough. Vietnam is an interesting one. Vietnam, I know frighteningly little about Vietnam, and I do. Hello, Freya. Nice to see you. I know frighteningly little about. Actually, Freya, we're having a fun time. I'm looking at the phantom time hypothesis and slowly slowly losing my mind as I watched someone try to tell me that because they didn't build enough castles, that means that they faked 1,000 years of history. Because the Chinese records and the records from Mali don't count, I guess. Yeah. This is what live stream. Hey, but the algorithm likes me getting mad at these conspiracy theories. I I might have to go and get a drink after this. But Vietnam is a very much a more complex war to look into. I have most of my stuff in Vietnam has actually been more of the supernatural side of like looking into it. Because I've always found that, especially in modern conflicts, how you see like World War II, obviously famous sort of Foo Fighters and stuff like that, and obviously everyone has their conspiracies about the Austrian Painters fan club and them maybe doing stuff extraterrestrials, and I like the psyche behind that to see like what were people seeing, and not necessarily jumping in of this is real, but like especially the lizard men in Vietnam really intrigues me because it's a very common thing. You find a lot of stories that soldiers told from Vietnam of lizard men, and if that's not something they actually saw, what was they seeing? I do like the idea that Viet Cong were just running around in lizard suits, but like what causes that if it's not? And it's an interesting side of things to look at. One of my favorite tactics used in Vietnam was the tunnels and traps that the Vietnamese use. Yes. There's actually some stories I've heard from like or seen in books. Yeah, it's very grim. Like the Vietnamese, where U.S. Marines and like soldiers would meet the Viet Cong in the tunnels and like have 1v1 battles, and it was it's quite. The Vietnam War is a lot more gruesome than people talk for. And obviously, whilst I don't like the government action that was taken in the Vietnam War, I think it's very disgusting the treatment that the soldiers got when they returned home. Because the soldiers were just sent out there and they were drafted as well. So because for being the land of the free, the US does love drafting people.
The illusion of the phantom time. Illig argues that the architectural achievements attributed to the Carolingian dynasty, particularly the construction of palaces and churches by
Thanks for joining, guys. Make sure on YouTube and TikTok, like and share the live. It puts it out in the algorithm.
He suggests that these architectural works were falsely attributed to the Phantom Time period to enhance the legitimacy and history.
So, either the buildings don't exist, and if you say that the buildings did exist, it's actually because they were built in a different time period, and the people are lying. Bro, this entire guy's argument is just I'm gonna move the goalposts until I'm right. That's it. That's his entire argument. That's his entire argument, is I'm just going to move the goalposts until I'm right.
Historical significance of the rulers involved. Critics of Illig's hypothesis argue that the perceived scarcity of archaeological evidence can be attributed to various factors unrelated to the fabrication of the phantom time. They highlight that archaeological research is subject to limitations, including preservation biases, destruction of sites over time, and the challenges of excavation and interpretation. The availability and accessibility of archaeological sites, funding constraints, and regional...
I haven't heard of that. Let me have a look. The Kingdom of Nauru. Nauru Republic, officially the Republic of Nauru, and formerly known as the Pleasant Island, is an island country, microstate in Micronesia of Oceania. Japanese New Guinea. Is this the one the French tested nukes outside of and like poisoned everyone? It does have its own Wikipedia page, it's there. But I wouldn't use Wikipedia as a source. No, it's not. I can't give you an opinion on the Kingdom of Nauru because I have absolutely no idea about it or its history. If it's not that, I do apologise. Okay, let's get back to the worst conspiracy theory so far. I think this is actually worse than Graham Hancock stuff, because Graham Hancock is at least just asking questions and saying, "Hey, there's some stuff that doesn't quite add up." He's jumping to conclusions very quickly, but at least he's just asking the questions. Whereas this is flat out saying that time doesn't exist. Or 1,000 years of our history doesn't exist.
Discoveries across different time periods. Additionally, Experts argue that the absence of archaeological evidence should not
Have
be
I ever
interpreted as
known the
conclusive
tracked
proof of the
shed known as the
non-existence.
Bob Semple tank? I do know of the Bob Semple tank. Yes, Bob Semple tank is one of my favourites. I absolutely love the Bob Semple tank. It's just so cute. It's just like it just wants so badly to be a tank, but it's just not. Like, I do love Bob Semple tank's brilliant. It's brilliant. I think that Bob Semple tank got a little bit of fame from Hearts Fine 4. Yeah, it's brilliant. Why is there a poll up? I always get nervous. Is history? God damn it! This is what happens when you give your mods permissions. They're gonna remove their mod permissions soon.
Period. The survival and discovery of artifacts are influenced by a range of factors, including the materials used, preservation conditions, human activities, and natural disasters. Consequently, the perceived scarcity of archaeological evidence does not necessarily support the notion that the Phantom time period was entirely fabricated. Inconsistent document dating. Illig contends that documents from the Phantom time often exhibit inconsistencies in their dating.
I debunked this
He claims that
earlier. It's
certain
because the
charters,
Julian calendar was
papal
wildly
bulls,
inaccurate and people
royal
were using
decrees from
different
this
times.
period show signs of manipulation, such as anachronistic language or references to events that occurred after the supposed time they were written. According to Illig, these inconsistencies suggest a deliberate manipulation of historical documents during the Phantom time period. He contends that individuals or institutions involved in the fabrication sought to create the illusion of a longer historical timeline by inserting references to future events or using language that did not exist at the alleged time of the document's creation. Illig points to specific examples where he believes discrepancies exist. For instance, he claims that some charters or royal decrees mention events, people, or places that were not known or established until after the Phantom time period. These anachronistic references
I'm not too well versed. I'm not well versed enough in documents to actually completely debunk that. I would like him to show me exact examples, and I would like him then to show me and prove to me that these are written in the wrong time and frame of reference. At the same time, the easiest way for me to debunk it with my current knowledge, recently I did the video on Yule, and obviously the Yule video, I was talking about how a lot of our sources for Yule come long after the stuff was written. So it wasn't uncommon in the Middle Ages for people to write about stuff 50 to 100 years after it had happened and it had taken place. It was more the classical era that people were writing about stuff as it happened. And even then, when they expanded out and they learnt things from word of mouth through the Celts and the Germanic tribes, they would then have to write about stuff that had already happened through word of mouth. And this was a common occurrence as well. Back then, reading isn't as, widespread. So, the spread of knowledge is going to be a lot slower. So people are often writing about stuff and say, oh, the King of England and the King of Scotland had a war. And then over time that passes through the rest of Europe and it gets documented. So there are going to be discrepancies because people are writing, and it's almost impossible because without a printing press to have that information be uniform. So there will be issues. Hang on. I've got to leave live now, but enjoy writing about someone spreading fake information. This is all good. Lily, thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, so hope to see you in the future lives. And again, love the profile picture. Nauru. It was a kingdom on present. It was kingdom on present day Nauru and was taken over by Germany after the Civil War. Interesting. Have you ever seen? What is the point of this? Why would they lie about 1,000 years of European history? So the argument that Heribert Illig, or whatever his name is, I've lost interest or care at this point. His argument is that Pope Sylvester II, Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, and the Eastern Roman Emperor Constantine the seventh, they wanted to rule at the turn of the millennium, which was obviously very significant because it's turn of millennium. So they wanted to rule 1000 CE or AD, whichever one you want to use. That's the entire basis of this conspiracy theory. That's it. That's the entire basis of the conspiracy theory. is they wanted to rule at 1000 AD, and so they got the entirety of Europe to play along. And then, obviously, he conveniently forgets that Asia and Africa existed. He can get away with North America and South America because they didn't really know they existed at that point in time. But, you know, the records we have from Asia, from Africa, completely would eradicate this because time, like, you know, did they all fake 1,000 years of history as well? For some random European bloke, they probably interacted twice during trade. Yeah.
Imply that the documents were either falsified or tampered with to extend the historical narrative beyond its actual time frame. Moreover, Illig argues that inconsistencies can be found in the language and writing style used in the documents. He suggests that certain linguistic features or grammatical patterns present in the texts are anachronistic and do not align with the historical context to which they are attributed. Illig interprets these linguistic anomalies as evidence of deliberate manipulation or forgery. One example of this is the donation of Constantine. Illig points to the donation of Constantine, a document allegedly written in the 4th century CE. According to Illig, this document contains anachronistic elements, such as references to Christian practices that did not exist until a later period. He suggests that the document was...
No, it doesn't. I know this quite well. Emperor Constantine is my favourite Roman emperor. The donation of Constantine is very well documented from multiple sources. So some of them may have got some details wrong. That's BS. That's complete BS. That happened. We know it happened. There's church sources. There's Roman clerical sources. There's imperial. There's the emperor's direct sources to this. We know that the emperor did the donation of Constantine. It's one of the most it's one of the biggest turning points in Roman history because it turned the Romans from a pagan empire to a Christian one. How? No, how? I genuinely am flabbergasted. I don't know how you can pretend that's wrong and it doesn't exist. I don't understand. That's one of the most documented things in, like... Let's keep going.
Fabricated during the Phantom time to legitimize the power of the Catholic Church. Another example is the...
Every conspiracy theory, they're doing their nut about the Catholic Church. Every single time it's a historical conspiracy theory. Oh, it was the Catholic Church! The Catholic Church! How powerful do you think the Catholic... Did you think, like, they're hiding lasers in the Vatican? What? What? There's every conspiracy theory, man. Every historical conspiracy theory. The Catholic Church is somehow convincing the entire planet to hide stuff.
Epistola cum Cursus. Illig suggests that the Epistola cum Cursus, a letter purportedly written by Pope Zachary in the 8th century CE, contains anachronistic elements. He claims that certain language and references in the letter do not align with the historical context to which it is attributed. Illig argues that this indicates a manipulation of time and dating. Illig also points to papal bulls from the Phantom time period that exhibit inconsistencies in the dating. He claims that some papal bulls refer to events or individuals that occurred or existed after the supposed time they were written. According to Illig, this suggests a deliberate manipulation of historical chronology. However, critics of the Phantom time hypothesis challenge Illig's claims regarding inconsistent document dating. They argue that the perceived anomalies may be the result of transcription errors, linguistic evolution, or variations in language usage across different regions and time periods. Furthermore, they emphasize that historical...
I'm very glad that... I love how I haven't even watched this and I had the exact same arguments that all of the actual academics do.
Documents often undergo modifications, additions, or corrections over time, which can lead to inconsistencies in dating. It is important to note that the examination of historical documents requires meticulous analysis by experts in the field of paleography, philology, and historical linguistics. Through the careful study of handwriting, language usage, and contextual clues, specialists strive to establish the authenticity and dating of historical documents. The consensus among these experts is that the perceived inconsistencies highlighted by Illig are insufficient to substantiate the existence of a fabricated phantom time period. Astronomical anomalies. Illig invokes astronomical data as evidence for his hypothesis. He highlights alleged discrepancies in ancient eclipse records, dating methods based on celestial observations, and the Julian calendar's accuracy during the Phantom time period. According to Illig, these anomalies further support the notion that the historical timeline...
Julian calendar was inaccurate. It had a drift. That's why we switched to the Gregorian calendar. You can't use the inaccuracy of the Julian calendar as your evidence for the missing time that you're proposing. You can't, like... Because we know that happened. We know the switch happened. It was even something like 16 or 18 days, that, like, the drift. Right? So... you cannot use the Julian calendar as like, oh, the Julian calendar was inaccurate and they used that to their advantage when they added in 1,000 years of history. It's unhinged, man.
It's been distorted. Illig argues that there are discrepancies in the lunar and solar cycles during the alleged Phantom time period. He claims that historical records and astronomical calculations indicate irregularities in the alignment of lunar phases and solar positions during this era. One specific claim...
It's the people without very good, very, very effective solar scanning equipment weren't that good and weren't very effective at having lunar and solar scanning equipment. I can't understand, like, this guy's meant to be a historian and somehow I have a better grasp of how that functions than he does. Like... Come on, man. Come on, man.
The dates of eclipses recorded during the Phantom time period do not align with the established astronomical predictions based on modern astronomical models.
Okay, so maybe our models are wrong. Maybe our models are wrong. Maybe they were seeing something different than we were. Like, these are questions to ask. This doesn't mean, oh, well, guess it didn't exist. History doesn't exist then. Like, I can't understand the leap that takes, because there's a good chance that the people observing it were misobserving it or not understanding what they were observing. Because again, we're going back through time. These people have a different technology. Like, they don't have the same ability to check the lunar and solar cycles as us. Right? There's points of the world that believe the Earth was flat at this time, so they might have got a few lunar cycles incorrect. And I can't understand how that warrants all of this missing history. It's just not strong. The evidence is at best a misunderstanding. At worst, it's just complete ignorance.
Historical records and a deliberate alteration of the chronological sequence. Illig asserts that calculations of celestial events, such as equinoxes and solstices, during the Phantom time period are flawed and do not match the expected astronomical positions. For instance,
again, so medieval people have flawed calculations because they're not quite there yet with science. It's so easily debunked.
Dates of equinoxes and solstices, which are critical astronomical events used to determine the changing seasons. Illig argues that these inaccuracies support the notion of a fabricated Phantom time period. It is important to note that Illig's claims of astronomical anomalies have been thoroughly scrutinized and refuted by experts in the field. Astronomical data, including historical astronomical records, corroborate the established chronology and demonstrate the consistency of celestial phenomena throughout history. The mainstream scientific community does not endorse the Phantom time hypothesis or the supposed astronomical discrepancies associated with it. So was Charlemagne real? With all of this in mind, Illig claims Charlemagne never even existed. He cites the lack of contemporary eyewitness accounts of Charlemagne's reign, suggesting that the absence of first-hand testimonies indicates a deliberate effort to erase the real historical records and replace them with fabricated narratives. Illig also questions the archaeological evidence attributed to Charlemagne's era. He claims that the artifacts and structures associated with Charlemagne, such as his palaces and monuments, lack sufficient physical proof or are misattributed to a different time period. He argues that this scarcity of tangible evidence supports his theory of a manipulated historical timeline. Furthermore, Illig highlights inconsistencies in the chronology of events during Charlemagne's reign. He points to discrepancies in the dating of charters, papal bulls, and royal decrees from that era. Illig suggests that anachronistic language or references to events that occurred after the supposed time they were written indicate a deliberate manipulation of historical documents. Beyond Europe, While the
Here we go,
Phantom
here we
Time
go. Oh,
hypothesis attempts to challenge the
are they going to
authenticity of a
address
specific
this?
period in European history, it fails to account for the wealth of historical records and archaeological evidence from other parts of the world, such as China and Mexico, which contradict its claims.
We have an incredible amount of evidence from China and documents and archaeological evidence, because the Chinese dynasties, the various Chinese dynasties that would have been around during this time period, kept an incredible records of their history, and it's the easiest to debunk. So I really want to see how this person, because this person that's made this video is very obviously on his side, and I'm very curious as to how they're going to put that forward. How they're going to try and debunk this.
These diverse sources provide robust evidence that undermines Illig's hypothesis. In China, for example, historical records and archaeological findings from the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907 CE, directly contradict the notion of a phantom time period. The Tang dynasty is a well-documented era with extensive historical records, including detailed court chronicles, official documents, poetry, and literature. These records establish a continuous narrative
Hey,
and
Dutch
provide a
historian,
wealth
good to
of
see you.
information about the political, cultural, and social developments of the time. The existence of multiple Tang emperors, such as Emperor Taizong and Emperor Xuanzong, is firmly established through a rich body of historical sources and inscriptions. Archaeological discoveries in China, such as tombs, artifacts, and ancient structures, further corroborate the historical authenticity of the Tang dynasty. Excavations have revealed magnificent palaces, Buddhist temples, tombs of emperors, and
so we actually have straight up physical evidence. I love the fact that they're actually admitting this now as well. They've gone through this entire video fighting for their lives to prove that they are right. Fighting with every fibre in their being. And now they've got to the part that I was calling out from the start of this is the issue we have. And now it's just fumbling and crumbling because they have to admit it doesn't work. Because you can't have the physical evidence, the multiple Tang emperors as they've claimed. You can't have the written records en masse in China, in Africa, in the New World as well. That, like, it completely contradicts it. Hey, good question. If a small kingdom, like the one I previously mentioned, Kingdom of Nauru, assuming TikTok cut you off because the comment was too long. Isn't internationally well known or recognised, does it still count as a kingdom? There's a bit of a geopolitical question there. In that case, I would say yes, it does exist in its own form of nationhood without the recognition. I don't think you necessarily need recognition from the worldwide, the international community as a whole. It'd be like a private enterprise setting up a colony on Mars and it forms its own country on Mars, but no one on Earth accepts it. It's still there. There's still people living there. It's still, its own governing body. It's just the international community wanting to swing its dick around, basically. Yeah, that's my view on it. Anyways, you don't need, because different nations are gonna accept or accept or deny depending on their alliances and stuff. Russia and America, very case in point, accept and acknowledge and don't acknowledge different nations around the world at different times, depending on who they're allied with and what best suits them. That's just the way geopolitics works throughout all of history. So I don't think the recognition of a larger nation or the international community as a whole necessarily gives valid reason on if a nation has nationhood or not. So such as the Kingdom of Nauru, then obviously it is a nation because it has people living there, because it has a leadership system. So we can say for certain it's a nation state. It's just the bigger nation states wanting to swing their dick around and say what's real and what isn't. And if you follow me for any time, you know my thoughts on governments.
Providing tangible evidence of the era's cultural and architectural achievements. The presence of these well-documented historical events and physical remains in China strongly contradicts the claims made by the phantom time hypothesis.
Exactly. That's the biggest one if you're looking just solely at Europe. If Charlemagne isn't real, If Charlemagne isn't real, how did most of Europe end up being Christian? Like, 'cause you could argue the Romans, yeah, but you would still have, when the Saxons came over and kicked out the Romano Celts, because they weren't properly Celtic at this point, they were Romano Celts. They had been romanticized, yeah. But Tuitonga is one of the oldest empires. I actually did a video. I actually in my what your favorite empire says about you series, I did Tuitonga because people requested it and I didn't know what it was. But yeah, yeah, like most of Europe would have ended up pagan if Charlemagne didn't exist, because the pagans would have dominated. They would have come down from the Germanic and the Celtic regions, the ones that were not romanticized, such as the Picts. The Picts were probably the last of the Celts. It's also I kind of prescribe to the idea that the Picts were culturally Celtic, but they weren't Celts ethnically. It's a bit convoluted how you get there, and I've covered it before in my Pict video, which was like the second video I ever did, so it's very old now. I might revisit it at some point. It's on my second YouTube video. But yeah. Oh, was you that asked about Tuitonga Empire? That's fair enough. Yeah, not being occupied, meaning it has kept its independence throughout its entire history. That's very based.
Mexico, civilizations such as the Maya and Aztecs have left behind a vast wealth of historical records, codices.
We'll jump in here and say they left a vast amount of historical records, the ones that we still have that the Spanish didn't burn. Because when you want to talk about everyone gets mad at the British Empire. No one talks about the Spanish Empire. The Spanish Empire was up there with the Ottomans as one of the most horrific empires. Like, it's not even like a case of balancing act. At least the British, had West Africa Squadron. The Spanish just were like, "Hey, you're not Catholic. Haha, sucks to be you. Would you like this rope around your neck?"
Inscriptions and architectural marvels.
Spanish.
These records and artifacts
American,
provide detailed accounts of rulers, significant events.
You're gonna get me cancelled by proxy if you keep doing this.
Spanning centuries. The Mayan long count calendar, for instance,
no one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Cycles and
least of all the Aztecs.
Historical events over an extended period, effectively disproving the notion of a phantom time period.
Yeah. Wait. Sorry. So we've reached the end of this video. We've got to the end, and the thing I've been bringing up continually. Also, I kind of don't like that level of tourism, because that's just going to wind down the pyramid over time. But I know obviously people went up and down it a lot in its history, but you know what I mean. Needs to be protected. But so we've reached the end of this, and the thing I've been saying all along about what about Asia, what about North and South America, what about Africa, what about these records, and they've really tried to push this to the end. So they've pushed this, the conclusive part that debunks everything they've said so far, to 15. Well, when did this start? Beyond Europe. So they pushed this to 13 minutes. They pushed this to 13 minutes.
Further refute of a manipulation of the Maya and Aztec civilizations.
So they pushed it right to the end.
These archaeological findings align with the well-documented historical accounts and inscriptions, further undermining the claims of a manipulated historical timeline. The presence of extensive historical records, archaeological evidence, and the interconnections between different civilizations across the globe provide a robust and interconnected view of history. The fact that these sources from China, Mexico, and numerous other regions align with each other and with the established timeline further refutes the phantom time hypothesis, which is primarily focused on a limited portion of European history.
So you've debunked your own video.
Comprehensive historical records and archaeological evidence from China, Mexico, and other regions globally provide substantial proof against the claims of the phantom time hypothesis. The wealth of diverse sources and their alignment.
I don't know much about China, but the fact that what do we talk about? Hey, we're going to talk about China. What image do we put up on the screen for China? The Terracotta Army and the Great Wall of China. Brilliant.
Phantom time period and supports the widely accepted understanding of history. As fascinating and intriguing as it might be, the phantom time hypothesis has been widely criticized and debunked by the majority of historians and experts in the field. They argue that the perceived anomalies and inconsistencies identified by Illig can be better explained by limitations in historical documentation, challenges in dating methods, and the complexities of interpreting historical sources. They maintain that substantial evidence exists for the events and figures associated with the phantom time period, rendering Illig's hypothesis highly speculative and lacking empirical support. While Illig presents these claims and pieces of evidence to support his theory, it is essential to approach them with a critical mindset. The prevailing consensus within the academic community is that the historical chronology between 614 and 911 CE is firmly grounded in genuine historical evidence. The discrepancies highlighted by Illig are typically viewed as the result of inherent challenges and uncertainties in historical research, rather than deliberate fabrication or insertion of a phantom time period. In conclusion, the phantom time hypothesis presents a provocative and controversial alternative view of history.
It's not controversial, because
While it may
controversial
spark
means that
curiosity
some
and
people
intrigue,
accept it, some
important
people
to
don't.
approach it with skepticism and consider the overwhelming
Like,
counter-arguments
Joe
and
Rogan
lack
is a
of empirical
controversial
evidence supporting
podcast
its
host.
claims. You have been watching The Mystery Abyss.
Is this going to be my mind unveiled? Like, I don't know if you guys watched the Tartaria beef that Aidan Mattis had. What on earth am I being advertised? Astronaut trapped on a planet where they're all women and he's the only man. So don't make joke, Ryan. Terms of service. Right. Okay. So now we're here. Now at the end, I'm gonna actually we'll go to just chatting for a second, and then I'll show you the two videos. I'm gonna show them now in case you guys want to head off. So the two videos I want to bring up that I don't want to take away views from is the Metatron. The Metatron's video on this. You've probably all seen the Metatron.
Landed feudal Japan.
He's an Italian geezer. He's actually well studied. He is an academic himself. He's not the kind of pretentious academic, but he is a decent academic. He goes into this and he heavily debunks it and covers it in a far more educational way than I can, as well as perhaps my favourite YouTube channel, Kings and Generals. I don't know why I've got captions on, but yeah, my favourite channel, Kings and Generals. So I highly recommend these two guys for what I've covered today, because they will be able to cover it in much more detail and debunk the entire thing. But yeah, as for what I believe, what are my thoughts on the phantom time hypothesis? There's no way in any that the phantom time hypothesis actually works or makes sense. Well, before I go, which Pacific country do you think will gain independence first? Guam, Tahiti, Bora Bora, New Caledonia, New Cook Islands, or Easter Island? I hope they all do. My libertarian is showing. I hope they all do. It's complete bollocks. Agreed. Completely agree. It's complete bollocks. There's no. I just as was brought up earlier, why would they fake all of that history? Yeah, ruling at millennium's cool, but you've then got to convince the entirety of Europe to go along with it. And as he said, they were either too poor to understand what they were doing, or the entirety of Europe was complicit in the fabrication. Why would a peasant or a serf give we're streaming on TikTok a poop about what their lord's doing, right? Some of the lords might be in on it because they would want to be lords in the millennium, but it's so easily debunked. You've just got to bring up the records we have in Asia, the records we have in Africa, South America. They weren't really record keeping up in North America, but they might have been. I'm not sure. I might not be aware of that, but so yeah, that's my view. There's no way, the evidence for it that he claims is there is very easily just can say you're not reading records correctly, or records weren't written down correctly. You're looking at discrepancies, and instead of going, okay, what's the reason behind this? Why do all of these papers say this but this one doesn't? I think he sees in some of these paintings and some of these old documents that he's looking at, I think he sort of sees some medieval Edward Snowden, and that's just not the case. That's a cool idea, but yeah. Let me know some questions just before we go, and if you don't have any, I'll head off. Make sure to check out, I still have my last YouTube video, which was an hour and 16 minutes on did the Christians steal Yule? It's a very similar verdict and style to my 2022 Christmas special, was the Roman Christmas Saturnalia. I'm going to be going live with Aidan Mattis either tonight or next Sunday, to be talking about Selkies, so I hope to see you guys there. And I'm also going to be starting a new show with Trip Ainsworth, the author of Smoke Bit Fairy Tales, called Trip into History, and that will be starting next Sunday as well. Make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube and following over on TikTok and following over on Instagram, which I will try and start to triple stream soon. But that'll be what time will that be? So if you're in the UK, the Law Lodge go live normally around midnight, between 11 p.m. and midnight. I don't know if I'm going on the show this week or next week. It's one of those times. And then for mine and Trip show that starts next week, we'll be going live about 6:30 UK time, so GMT. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. And end the live. Yeah, end the live. Why do you give me so many buttons? There it is.